For the last couple of years, cheating in online FPS games has seemed like an unsolvable problem, especially when people who are caught cheating can just make another account. But one company thinks they might have the answer, and I sat down with the CEO to chat about what they're working on. So this is PlaySafe ID. Their vision is that they will be able to provide you with a unique ID, and to get that, you have to go through verification. Not with PlaySafe, they don't take any of your personal information. Instead, you do that through a company called Onfido, who provide a verification for loads of banks across the world, including Revolut. So a trustworthy company. You will go through verification with them, and if you can prove that you're a real person, that your documents match you, and you've never registered with them before, then they will tell PlaySafe to issue you with an ID. Then, within games that are using PlaySafe ID, you'll be able to join matchmaking, where you only play against other people that also have a PlaySafe ID. Then the idea is that anyone that is caught cheating, so anyone that's found to be cheating in any of the games that they're using their PlaySafe ID with, will get banned. And then when they get banned, they won't be able to play any games using that PlaySafe ID, not just the one that they were banned from. So this should hopefully solve the problem of cheaters being caught and then just creating a new account, because you literally won't be able to create another PlaySafe ID. At least that's the idea. It's obviously a little bit more complicated than that, and this is still early days for the company, but I sat down with Andrew Wailes, the CEO of the company, to ask him a little bit more about how all of this works. So for the first part, I just wondered if you could give me a quick overview of what PlaySafe ID is.
I would coin it as the accountability layer that's been missing, right? So within gaming, you can create a million accounts. You can kind of do what you want. It doesn't really matter if you're caught cheating, if you're caught botting, if you're caught doing whatever, right? Because you can just create a new account and come back in. We're really looking to solve that specific element. So we've done it in a way that preserves privacy, and we've done it in a way that means that we don't get to see or store any of the data, documents, or biometrics used during the verification. But we can still generate this one unique identifier for each person, which we can hold them accountable against. So in my head, I like to think of PlaySafe ID as the accountability layer of gaming.
Okay, cool. So how would it work for like a gamer, for someone who wants to play a game that is using PlaySafe ID? How would it work for them?
Yeah, for sure. So you go through the initial verification. So there's a couple of ways you can discover us, right? Let me take it back a step. So option one is you've never heard of us and you just see a game has started working with us. The game adds a button in, which is connect your PlaySafe ID. So you click that button, you're given a QR code. If you already have an account, you scan the QR code and then you log in on your phone, and then that's what does the connection and some cool stuff in our backend. If you haven't heard of us before, then instead of logging in, you would then be prompted to create the account. So then you create the account. When games integrate us, they basically have an optional toggle. So you can play normally exactly as you are today, or you can choose to only be match made with people who have a valid PlaySafe ID. So that's it. Like, you do a one-time verification with us, and as we integrate with more and more games, you don't have to verify ever again. You don't have to share any data with anyone. We've got this cool zero knowledge workflow that I've mentioned. But yeah, it's a case of you just log in, it's connected, and you're good to go.
Yeah, cool. So what's the status of it right now? Like, is the system working now for games? Are there any games that have signed up to this?
Yeah, so we did our first larger scale tech test with a game on Friday, which is an extraction shooter, and I'll be writing about that and talking about that more. I don't like answering this question, right? Because people go, oh, he's talking rubbish. But we're currently negotiating contracts with a couple of the biggest first-person shooters, and we're looking to have one of those integrations within the end of July to beginning of August.
Soon.
And a handful of them by the end of the year. I'm not going to give specific dates, because if I give specific dates, then you'll be able to figure out. You could take a good guess at what games, and I don't want to do that.
But are you, in terms of like your approach to this, are you trying to cast the net as wide as possible for like any game? So indie titles as well as like, free to play games, mobile games, like everything, or are you just going for FPS, PC shooters?
To begin with, our core focus is FPS. Because that has the biggest pain point towards cheating and the most immediate negative feedback loop for players, right? Like, it's instant, it sucks, and no one likes the feeling of being cheated. So that's kind of like our immediate goal. However, our mandate is to make sure that all games are as fair, fun, and safe as possible. That's kind of like our ultimate mission. We obviously talk a lot on the cheating side, but one of the things that gets people a penalty and a straight permaban is being inappropriate to children in terms of like grooming, sextortion, like really nasty, awful stuff, right? Because these people, again, just create a new account and come straight back in, and it's awful. So that's the safe portion, is making sure that everyone of all ages can enjoy gaming without the risk of threat or being cheated or whatever. But yeah, no, platform's live, it's working. We had a very successful test, and yeah, looking forward to having some of these proper large integrations within the next couple of months.
So when you're doing a test like that, this is more just out of my curiosity, are there people that cheated during that test?
Yes.
Like you had to ban, well, you had people banned from it. That's crazy.
Yes. It's nuts. The thing is, this is and I'm keeping it quiet until we're doing a post-mortem on Wednesday with the team, sort of like go through some bits before we align PR and stuff. But what we basically saw, they're in playtesting at the moment. So this was part of one of their playtests. And yeah, they don't have the same level of security infrastructure and anti-cheat that some big games have. So yeah, there are a lot of people that were like trying their luck, and yeah, they caught quite a lot of people taking the piss. Yeah.
That's good. So what is the process? So if I assume it's the developer or the publisher that actually does the cheat detection. So say, Call of Duty is the game that I play, and like a lot of my audience will know. So they have Ricochet, their anti-cheat thing. They issue bans from that. Hypothetically, if Call of Duty was using this PlaySafe ID, what would be the process for them to like interact with you?
Yeah, so we only have 2 endpoints. We don't even have an SDK. Like the integration is super, super lean and super easy. The first endpoint is to call us to say, hey, this person, do they have a valid PlaySafe ID? And we say true or false. The second is a post violation. So they get to post to us a stat trace, evidence, etc., of what it was that they observed. So that could be a logic-based detection. They saw that memory was altered. Someone was using aimbot. They were using it in this way, right? It could be a very, very good detection, or it could be a heuristic detection, so pattern detection models. They would pass that info to us. And basically, we've got some cool stuff on our back end where we look at the context of the game, the context of the cheat that was observed, or the offense that was observed. We build trust scores on users. How long have you been a PlaySafe ID user for? How many games have you got connected? Roughly how many sessions have you played? We know that because each time that the developer calls us to say, do they have a valid ID when they match make? So we can calculate that. And we're able to basically go, oh, we've seen you for years. Let's assume that this is years down the road and we've had users for years. We've seen you for years. You've never been caught cheating across anything. Maybe we detected, or the Activision Blizzard detected speed hacking, right? And it's kind of an odd cheat within Call of Duty, not unheard of, but it doesn't, it's not like the main MO. We would be able to look at the payload of evidence that was sent to us, and we would be like, okay, well, speed hacking, it's not unheard of, but it's not super common. It was a heuristic detection, not a logic-based detection, so there's an error there. We trust this user, we trust the developer. Maybe we flag the account as opposed to issuing a penalty because it's a little bit... so we're independent in determining what actions are made to a PlaySafe ID, right? It's not a case of the game developer said that they're going to ban the account, therefore we have to put a penalty on the PlaySafe ID. But we also have a view of people over a longer period of time across lots of different games as well. So it helps us build a little bit of a better picture about the likelihood of an offense being a false positive or being genuine. So yeah, we've got some cool stuff.
And is that when it comes to you banning people, do you have choices about whether you just ban them for certain titles or it's a whole platform ban? Like, do you have that kind of option?
It's a whole PlaySafe ID ban. And by a ban, it's not a straight perma ban. It'll be stair-step penalties, right? So again, it's contextual. If we see very weak evidence for something, but it's maybe strong enough that we think, yes, a decision should be made, maybe it's a week or 2 weeks, right? So it's more kind of like a slap on the wrist caution, but us erring on the side of caution. Whereas if it's very, very clear that someone's using ESP and aimbot, we can see that memory's been altered. We can see exactly what cheat they're using, exactly how they've done it. It's clear cut. There are no ifs, ands, or buts. Then it might be a much longer penalty. And penalty scale. So the second offense that you get will be a lot longer than the first, and the third will be a lot longer than the second, up to the point of potentially perma for people that are cheating.
Okay, and how much of that is automated? Because, you hear of like Call of Duty will come out and say they just banned 20,000 cheaters or something. I can't imagine you've got the staff to look at 20,000 accounts like in a season.
No, 100%. Yeah, so we've got a really great team, and one of the people that we're now bringing on is a PhD economist who specializes in game economics and behavioral analytics. He spent his career playing with this kind of stuff, and he's brilliant. I've worked with him before. He's legitimately a genius, and he's also a lovely bloke, which is great. He talks human, which is a fun quirk as well. It's great. But he's going to be heading this up and leading this. Basically, the way that we have it is an automated system, and there is basically a gray area where we will be having manual spot checks, as well as potential reviews to it as well. So the clear stuff is easy to deal with. Just hit my mic there, sorry. The clear stuff's easy to deal with. The clearly not stuff is easy to deal with. It's that sort of like fuzzy gray line, which is only sort of like 0.1 or 0.2% of all reports that come through that kind of need to be spot checked and make sure we're dealing with it in the right way. As we integrate with more people, as we get more players, as we reach sort of like the hundreds of thousands to millions to tens of millions of players, obviously we're going to be getting so much data through as well. It helps make that fuzzy area thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner to the point that, it's a pretty good, damn good system.
Okay. So what are the big sort of obstacles you're facing? I mean, I know obviously you want to hype it up and get people involved, but what are the sort of big problems that you're happy to talk about?
It's a really good question. Starting out, the big challenge that we faced, and this is part of the bet, right? Because this company's a bet, like any company's a bet. We think that people want to play without cheaters. We think that parents want their children to play without pedophiles. We think that game developers don't want cheaters, and they actually want to keep them out. They're basically the three bets that we're making, right? And they all seem like quite sensible bets, but you don't know until you actually run the experiment. So it was really, for me, the challenge was, do game developers actually want to get rid of cheating, right? In all honesty, because you can get sucked into the echo chamber as a consumer of games content, right? And you can hear all of the rumors that people will rebuy the game, they'll spend money, they don't. And the challenges as well is, I had this conversation with the head of anti-cheat of a major studio about 3 hours ago. They're not very vocal about cheating within their game because it's the optics of the marketing team and the communications team that if you are addressing that there's a problem, you're addressing there's a problem. Whereas if you kind of stay shut, then there is no problem. Now, we all know that as consumers of game content, that isn't actually true, right? Yeah. And they're making a shift now. They're now moving from not talking about it, and it's kind of like it's not allowed to be spoken about topic, to something that they're actually addressing, and they're being quite forward thinking about it, which is I think a brilliant movement as a player. I think it's good to have that transparency. We all know that there's cheating in games. It's ridiculous to say that there's no cheating games and sweep it under the rug, I think, is the wrong move. But that's generally kind of like the sentiment of studios, is it's like, oh, we don't want to talk about it too much. So I wasn't 100% sure going into this that this was going to be really well received by developers. And that's a lot of the feedback that we've had across some of the Reddit ads that we've run and some of the community outreach that we've done. Generally, people aren't against the idea of what we're doing. They're very up for the idea. The most negative bit of feedback that we get is, oh, game developers just aren't going to do it. We've had game developers now start approaching us and asking to do stuff with us. We're not reaching out to them and selling to them. Like, they've got wind of what we're doing. Their communities are talking about it. Players are excited about it. So that was the kind of like big problem that we had. And it's nice to see that that's now starting to resolve itself. With that, we've got our seed allocated now, so our next round of fundraising. So we've got that already pre-allocated, so that's ready to happen. So we raised $1 million before. This will be a $5 to $6 million round, and we're already now starting to allocate and put stuff in place for when we hit certain user numbers to raise our next round, which will be a Series A that'll be at the 30 to 50 million. So we've got kind of like the commercial side good, the finance side good, the platform's in a really good place. All of our testing is really positive. User excitement seems really high, and studios I'm not trying to do this as a sales bit as well, and the hype bit. Like, I've spent my career working in startups, like the last 5 years, especially like focusing on startups. And what I've really found is generally there's a lot more problems. And me and the team, we've all spent years and years working in startups, and we're all like, oh, this is what it feels like when we're solving a real problem that people actually really want, and people want to integrate it. Like, we're in this weird place where things are working, and it's nice. It's good.
So one of the things that I'm sure people watching this will be thinking is, with, say, going back to Call of Duty, they started banning people, and the problem was that because it was free accounts, anyone could just get a new account. And so a few years ago, they started doing phone verification where you needed a phone number to connect to your account, otherwise they wouldn't let you do it. And then obviously people just got fake phone numbers. You can generate a phone number with no problems. Is it possible for people to use a fake ID? People have been using fake IDs for decades. With the company that you're working with, can they just scan in a random ID, or do they somehow know whether someone's real or not?
It's a brilliant question. It's one of the bits of criticism that we face from the gaming community is a couple of people are like, oh, AI deepfakes. Oh, they'll just buy a document or whatever. Let me explain how it works to kind of put this to bed. So you have to use a document as a photo ID, and you have to have your face. All of the verification is handled by Onfido, who are literally the Rolls Royce of KYC providers. Their tech is phenomenal, and I'm so glad to have them as a partner. The way that it works is you have to do the verification through a phone. Okay, it's forced cross device. We don't allow the upload of documents. It has to be the actual camera that's used. Okay, now through the Onfido SDK. Onfido, I'll interchange between the pronunciations because I don't do that. But through the SDK, they basically take control of the camera settings, so they can adjust focus by microscopic amounts, so you don't notice it. They can flash the backlight on and off really quickly. They can do stuff, and what they basically do is they check the liveness of you, and they check for image injection. They check for the match between the document, and they check the authenticity of the document. If you wanted to use a deepfake, or if you wanted to use image injection or any of this kind of stuff, it really does quite easily get detected by their SDK. Like it's because it's done on this external device. If it was a case, and there are some KYC providers and some solutions that enable you to just upload a document off of your computer or whatever, that would be open to people buying fake IDs and stuff like that, right? And even then, they have checks for if a document's been reported stolen to like the police or authorities or stuff like that. They're part of a massive database of that, so they can flag reported stolen documents. They flag repeat use documents. So if a document's been seen before, they flag that. But yeah, in terms of like image injection, all of this kind of stuff, they've really got it down pat. So it actually has to be a real document, and it actually has to have a real photo in it, and that photo has to actually match your face. Those things all have to be true. It's a really nice way to prevent people buying IDs, people exploiting the system.
Okay, cool. Just changing topics a little bit, talking about the features of what you're doing. It sounds like the idea is to keep it quite simple, because you're going to have a profile, your PlaySafe ID profile, that is then connected to, in theory, eventually, hopefully, lots of different games. Are there any plans to make that side of it visible at all? So like to have the social media aspect of it, where someone could, your friend could look at what games you've been playing, because something like that crosses lots of different games is quite a valuable thing in itself. That's what Xbox and PlayStation and Steam have been doing.
For sure. It's an interesting thought. We haven't decided yet. The reason is just because we haven't decided, to be honest with you. It's a really big question. It's a really big not shift in what we're doing, but it's a new feature set. It's a new level of use for PlaySafe ID, and we're not sure how useful it will be, or whether it would be kind of like a nice to have, or if it's a gimmick, or if it would. So we're not too sure about it yet. One of the other things that we're toying with at the minute is displaying different levels without giving necessarily the full profile level of detail into a profile, but different levels to sort of like a verified tick, sort of like this person's never been caught doing anything ever sort of level, versus they currently don't have a penalty, but they have had a penalty before of some description, versus someone currently has a penalty. So kind of like a 3-tier thing. So that's something that we're immediately thinking about. And I think the natural progression from that is then, how does that then go on to more like a full profile? And do we want to have like sort of like a Steam profile or a PlayStation Network profile or whatever profile? So no plans to do it as of today, but yeah.
That was going to be sort of my next question, is just going on to that. Like, is there going to be a way for people to see who's been banned by something? So I know
think this could be that signal.
Yeah, lots of game companies have talked about, GDPR and the idea that they don't really want to issue ban lists, and other games do. They'll, publish their entire ban list every couple of months. I think as a streamer, as a content creator, I would be quite up for, having, as you say, a verified tick to say, hey, this, the Geeky Pastimes account hasn't been banned in any games or anything like that, because that kind of gives me a leg up, maybe when I'm compared to someone else.
When
exactly.
People are watching you, like with streamers, right? If I'm watching a streamer, if I'm donating to a streamer, if I'm subbing to a streamer, I want to know that they're legit. I want to know that they're actually producing this content because they're shit hot. I want to know that when they do well, it's because they're actually doing well. I don't want to support someone that's a fraud, right?
Yeah.
And I think that this is a really important part of what we're looking to do, especially with the scope of us working with, the likes of streaming platforms. I think it would be amazing to give that transparency to audiences that, that you're
Don't start
actually
naming
playing.
names.
I know. I thought about it for half a second. I was like, nope.
But yeah, I mean, but that is a thing that, like there's lots of people who regularly get accused of cheating because they're really good at a particular game, and if they could say, well, look, this is my account, this is connected to my real identity in some way, that would work great. So just a few extra things, like kind of Lisa going a bit all over the place. Is there a plan to use this alongside chat or voice moderation for, like, people who are toxic or going on to things, like racism, or you start getting into a difficult area of like political issues? Are you going to be involved in anything to do with that, or are you just focusing on cheating? And as you said, keeping kids safe as well.
As of today, we're just focusing on the cheating side of things, with the exception of sensitive topics. I talk about them quite openly and freely because I'm exposed to this kind of industry and stuff. But so sensitive warning for any of your listeners or viewers on the child safety side of things. Sextortion, grooming. There's CC, which is child sexual exploitation abuse. There's CSAM, which is child sexual abuse material. These are all really, really big topics. And unfortunately, bad actors can just create new accounts and come back in so they can re-access children again. It's disgusting. It's horrible. So that's the degree that we will deal with voice chat and text chat moderation. We'll ingest those, and if we can see, and the legislation's very clear on these points, right? Like someone over the age of 18 has to know the person is under a certain age and has to be communicating with them in a very specific way. There's no way anyone accidentally does any of these things. So we'll ingest those, and then we'll issue bans to a PlaySafe ID for anyone that's caught being sexual or inappropriate to minors, or that meet any of the criminal criteria, right? We don't have any plans as of today to go into any of the toxicity side of things because it's such a contextual and difficult problem to solve, right? Like the language that I use with my mates when we're playing a shooter together is very different to the language that I'll use with strangers, is very different to the language that I'll use with, if I know that someone's under the age of like 15 in a game, will be very different as well. And regionally specific as well. Like what's okay in Australia isn't okay in the UK, is maybe different from what's okay in North America, is different. It's such a hard problem to solve. So there's wonderful companies like Modulate who are doing God's work in this space, and they're doing a really, really good job. The only world I see that we end up implementing toxicity against a PlaySafe ID is in line with law and legislation. So if, for example, and again, I'm going to mention some sensitive trigger words here, so please bear that in mind, and feel free to skip forward a couple of seconds. But like legitimate death threats, legitimate rape threats, legitimate, like the worst behavior, we could look to bring that into scope, because I think universally we can all agree that saying, if it's a game girl that's joined, some of the things that people will say to these people is just, it's just not okay. But we're not dealing with that today, but as more legislation comes in, like the Online Safety Act of July 24th, so in a couple of weeks, we might look to bring some more of these things in scope to help game developers, because it then becomes the law, right? It's not political, it's the law. And if people aren't happy with the law, then they can look to do stuff about that. They can contact their representatives, they can join lobbying groups, they can do stuff about that, but we have to abide obviously by law and legislation. Sorry if that was a waffly answer.
No, that's perfect. And I you mentioned talking about other countries there. Will this work for people from every country? Because obviously most gaming is sort of global. Me playing in Europe all the time, you've got people from all over Europe in a single game. But I imagine having access to being able to verify their driving licenses or passports or anything like that is probably quite a challenge with some countries. Is this something that's going to be available for gamers everywhere? Or will the gamers from those other countries just be sort of blocked from those playlists?
So we haven't yet come across a country from the tests that we've done and the thousands of users that we've tested through. And we've had We've had Asia, we've had Africa, we've had Europe, we've had Latin America, we've had North America. We've had the full spectrum, right? The only challenge that we faced so far is North Korea and Iran aren't accepted. And that's just because Onfido just doesn't process documents from those two regions. The third one, and this was a discovery for me, I didn't know that this was the case. We accept Russian documents, but Russia actually has a law, which is if you're a Russian national in Russia, your data isn't legally allowed to leave Russia. So we had this this kind of discovery where there were a bunch of Russian nationals that were inside Russia that were trying to verify, and from our side, we were like, oh, it's you haven't done the process, and from their side, it's like, oh, we have done the process, and it said that it's failed. And upon investigation, it's because of this Russian law that it means that any data that Onfido receives from a Russian IP is just immediately scrubbed, and it can't be processed because of this case. So yeah, that was the edge case there. But any Russian national with a Russian document that doesn't have a Russian IP, so maybe they're in another country or whatever, no problems processing that. But yeah, but aside from that, yeah, it's global reach. It's great.
Cool. So going back to the children issue, really, I think on your website it say the minimum age for this is 13. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So will parents be able to check in on what their kids have been doing? Like, will parents be able to see, have their children been banned from games? Have their children been...
So the way that it works is, yes, 13 is the cutoff limit. If you're under the age of 13, or if you're under 18 and you don't have a document, you can have a parent create PlaySafe ID. And then there's a whole parent section on the website where they can add a child. The child account and the parent account are linked. So if one gets a penalty, the other gets a penalty. We had to do this because otherwise people would just create loads of children. They get banned on the child, create new child, banned, create new band, and so on and so forth. So we had to put this in place, which adds a level of responsibility at a family level, like my child, if when she's older and she's playing games and stuff like that, if she got me banned, I'll be furious. It's like, really play safe. But at the moment, we don't have anything in the way of parental oversight in terms of, the parent could see what games are connected, but there's no like reports or chat logs or kind of like this level of stuff. It's more about the parent basically having to add the child and giving consent that the child is allowed to have this platform. So we're compliant with COPPA. But it's also about then the parent saying the age of the child. So the child isn't self-declaring their age, the parent's saying the age of the child. So with like the Online Safety Act and some other legislation where highly effective age assurance is required, and I can go into the weeds there, but I won't for now unless you ask. Basically, game developers and all user-to-user internet services have to know the actual age of a user, of a UK user or an Australian-based user, to keep them safe from harmful content to children and illegal content harms. So that's part of us being able to tick a compliance and legislative tick box for game studios by knowing the age of the child, because the parent...
So would PlaySafe ID, if a child is registered as being 13, or they've signed up with their own documents and they're, say, 15, would PlaySafe ID not allow them to play, say, Call of Duty, being like 18
That's
rated?
A really interesting question. We wouldn't block it.
You wouldn't block it. So you're not taking on that kind of responsibility?
No, my kind of view to this, and this is Andrew Wailes, the CEO of PlaySafe ID point of view. No, let me start again. That's my point of view, external to the companies. We will need to have a conversation with lawyers about this and all kinds of stuff with this. But in the use case of a parent adding in a child in particular, and okaying the child to have access to content, that is the parent's responsibility in my belief. And we see this today already, right? Like, if a 14-year-old's given GTA by the parent, or the parent allows them to play GTA, I think the responsibility of that then falls on the parent and their access to content that the parent thinks is reasonable. But it's a tough topic. What the game studios decide to do once they actually have the highly effective age assurance validation of someone's age, which is now a legal requirement in a month's time in the UK and Australia, that's completely a different kettle of fish. I don't know how that then fits with rating guidelines and what they do, or I don't know how it works from their perspective at that level. But on our side of things, we won't restrict access to anyone based on their age. That's down to the game developer to decide what they want to do.
Okay, cool. So if someone is watching this and now they're like, okay, I'm interested, I want to sign up, how do they do this? How do they get involved in it right now?
Yeah, for sure. So there's basically two options. There's just a register your interest. So because we're not integrated with loads of games yet, I fully understand that people might want to create an account. So you can just you can just submit your email and register your interest, which is like a vote of, yes, I like this, I would use this. These votes help us approach game studios and have these conversations with game studios to be able to demonstrate there are tens of thousands of people that want to play Safe ID, and it helps speed up sales process and stuff. So that's a great way to help support us. If you want to go the extra mile, you absolutely can. Again, on our website, you can click claim your PlaySafe ID and you can actually verify. And our website is playsafeid.com. So feel free to jump in. You can just register your interest, or you can create a full account. But any support is really helpful.
Cool,
for sure.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time. I'm interested to see where this goes, and I'll post more once you've got this up and running with some of the games we play. I'm sure we'll check it out then. So a massive thank you to Andrew for taking the time to sit down and explain that to me. I definitely think it's a really interesting idea. I love the idea of tying your game account to your real life identity, so you've got a little bit of responsibility over it, a little bit of ownership over it, where if you do something wrong, if you decide to break the rules, then that's going to follow you. They can actually give you a punishment that might matter in some way. I think it's a good idea, but I would love to hear what you think. So let me know in the comments below. What do you think about this? Would you sign up for PlaySafe ID? And if you want to check it out for yourself, I'll put a link in the description below and you can check out the website there. Of course, if you enjoy this kind of content, support the video. Don't forget to leave a like, leave a comment, and I'll see you for the next one. Goodbye.